He was not allowed to tell anybody where this location was. This is where my true crime brain throws up a red flag. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name's Scarlett. Thank you so much for being here. Today I have a missing persons / possible abduction case to share with you guys. And I'm honestly shocked that I never heard of this case before, because it has what I feel is a lot of evidence supporting it. There's a lot of witnesses, there's handwritten notes. It just seems like a pretty solid case as far as abduction cases go. Yeah, we'll get into that later on. Before I get into the actual disappearance of this individual, I need to first give you guys some background on him. So if it seems like I'm just reciting his biography to you, it's because I am, but it's only because it actually ties everything together. Everything ties into who he was as a person, so I feel like it's important to share that before we get to the actual disappearance / abduction. So the individual in question is a man by the name of Granger Taylor. Granger was born on October 7th, 1948 in the town of Duncan, which is on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada. Duncan is a fishing and logging town. It's kind of a small community. Everybody there knows each other. Granger was a big, burly guy. He looked like a lumberjack, seemed like a nice person, but he was described as being a little strange. He was a little bit eccentric, but incredibly smart. He dropped out of school in 8th grade, but he was considered to be something of a prodigy. He was extremely skilled and fascinated by mechanical labor. I mean, people described him as a genius when it came to this stuff. When he was 14 years old, he built a single-cylinder automobile, which was put on display at the Duncan Forest Museum. So he built a car. He built a car when he was 14. That alone should just tell you the level of intelligence that this guy had. I mean, that is crazy to me. I feel like I say that every video. That is crazy to me. But it's crazy. A 14-year-old built a car, like, and he dropped out of school when he was in 8th grade. He didn't have any kind of formal training that I'm aware of. So in addition to building things, he also had a knack for restoration. He would find things in the woods that had been discarded and abandoned. He rebuilt an abandoned bulldozer when he was 17. In his early 20s, he restored an abandoned locomotive from the Great Depression era. Like, what the heck? Like, that, I mean, just these things alone, I feel like you could make a movie out of this guy. Like, he just sounds like, wow. He also bought a vintage Kitty Warhawk airplane, which he restored and sold for $20,000. So he was building things and taking on projects that seasoned mechanics had given up on. Like, they wouldn't even touch anymore. And he was doing an amazing job of it. But eventually he got bored of these projects and wanted to do something a little bit more challenging. So in order to do that, he set out to build a UFO. The way that his mind worked, he seemed to just be really intrigued by how things work. He wanted to figure out how UFOs managed to accomplish the aerial feats that are described by so many witnesses. Also, how are they able to travel through interstellar space? Mysteries that are still unsolved today. We don't know how that works still, and so yeah, pretty ambitious guy. But I guess if anyone could do it, it would be the guy who built a car when he was 14, right? So this UFO replica took him about 6 months to build, and he made it using materials and scrap metals, spare parts that he had collected over the years from his other various projects. Since he had no access to actual UFOs, he spent a lot of time researching through books on the topic and also tried to find people who had witnessed UFOs just to get any kind of information that he could about it. So he kind of made a little man cave of sorts, if you will, inside this UFO. He had like his little hangout area. He put a couch in there, he put a TV in there, He had like the whole setup. I think he even had a stove in there. And he would just sit in there and spend hours and hours pondering this mystery of how UFOs work. It was like that was his place to think about UFOs. And this is where things get a little funky, a little crazy. Now this part of the story is explained by Granger's good lifelong friend, Bob Nielsen. Bob said that Granger had told him that one day while he was lying in his UFO replica, an extraterrestrial entity contacted him telepathically and told him that it was from a world beyond ours, a world beyond our galaxy even, and basically was having a full-blown conversation with him and like letting him ask it questions. So of course Granger asked the burning question that had been bothering him for months and months. How do UFOs work? What is the technology? But all the being would tell him was that it was magnetic. That was all the information that it would give him on that. And I have no idea how Bob felt about this story, about this confession that Granger told him. But again, Granger was always kind of an eccentric person, so it's possible that Bob just thought, oh, he's just being Granger. Like, you know, I don't know about you guys. I'm sure if I came to my friends and said that, they would kind of just be like, okay, like sure, but they wouldn't think I was that weird because, I mean, like look at the shit that I talk about. People think I'm crazy all the time. A few days later, Granger came to Bob again and said that the being had contacted him yet again and invited him to come on a trip through the solar system. And Granger was excited AF for this. Like he was giddy about this because obviously that would be cool anyway, but also he's probably thinking with his little mechanical mind, maybe I can see how these UFOs work like in person. So this interstellar journey was to take place at the end of the month. He would be picked up at a secret location that would be revealed to him as the departure date got closer, but he was not allowed to tell anybody where this location was. Now, this is where my true crime brain throws up a red flag, because if you just take out the alien factor here, like if you were just looking at this as a true crime case and he wasn't talking about aliens, he was just talking about some person that told him to meet somewhere and not tell anybody where they were meeting, and then the person goes missing, like it just kind of like raises my suspicions on what the intentions were of this entity, like if they were good or bad. Again, this is speculation on speculation here, but it just kind of like makes me think. Then again, it would seem that extraterrestrials don't really seem to want to reveal themselves to everybody, so I can kind of understand that from that perspective. They don't want like the military showing up or something. I mean, who knows? Still kind of irks me a little bit though, not gonna lie. I don't think that anybody really believed him that he told about this. I don't know if he even told anybody aside from Bob. But whether they believed him or not, Granger was showing any and every sign that he was going on this trip. About a week before he disappeared, he took all his friends out for a night on the town as a going away party, and then just one day before he went missing, he pulled his stepfather, Jim Taylor, aside and just had a like heart-to-heart discussion with him about how much he appreciated him and loved him and thanked him for everything he'd done for him over the years. That would be the last time that Jim Taylor ever spoke to Granger. And unfortunately, Granger didn't say goodbye to his mother because at the time she was on vacation in Hawaii, which would be something she would come to regret later on. Okay, so now we come to the actual disappearance. So the last time Granger was seen was November 29th, 1980. Witnesses saw him enter Bob's Grill at about 6 p.m., which wasn't unusual. He was a regular there. But what was unusual was that there was an impending bad storm coming through town, and he was not dressed appropriately for that weather at all. One witness, Linda Barron, who worked the kitchen at the Grill, said that she remembered him wearing a brown knitted sweater, a black t-shirt, jeans, and logger boots. And so she specifically pointed out that he wasn't wearing a jacket, and that was just crazy because it was supposed to be a very, very bad storm. Strangely, Granger's winter jacket that he should have been wearing for that weather was discovered later on in his dog's doghouse. Like, what the hell was he doing there? Linda Barron then testified that Granger paid his bill at about 6:30 p.m., exited the restaurant, drove off in his vehicle, and that is the last known time that anybody ever saw him. The next morning, Jim Taylor, Granger's stepfather, is becoming increasingly worried that Granger never returned home the night before. So he contacts the RCMP, or Royal Canadian Mounted Police, to help locate Granger. They responded immediately. They put Granger on the National Police computer system. They also alerted the DMV in Victoria because Granger's driver's license had expired the month prior, so if he had renewed it, they would be alerted that he had done so. But after what Corporal Mike Demchuk described as exhaustive checks of hospitals, passports, employment, and vehicle records, not a single clue as to where Granger was produced or could be discovered. They pulled out all the stops. They did everything they could in their power to find this guy, and it was like he just had vanished into thin air. There was nothing. And what Corporal Demchuk actually thought was the most perplexing out of everything was that the vehicle was never found. So 4 years after Granger disappeared, Corporal Demchuk admitted that this was something that still mystified him. He said, "One would expect the car at least to be found. You just don't get rid of something that large without someone knowing about it." This is where things get a little murky and a little confusing, because there's conflicting reports that the car was found 6 years after Granger disappeared. He drove a 1972 pale blue Datsun pickup truck, and the car that was discovered 6 years after he disappeared was pink. I don't know if that was a misprint or the car that was discovered was actually pink, but that's not even the weirdest or most troubling part of what was found. The car that was found was exploded. Like, it was the remains of a vehicle that had been blown to smithereens. No body was found, no trace of human DNA, nothing. It was just this like exploded vehicle. There were theories going around that if this was Taylor's truck, maybe he had been carrying explosives in the back of it. When I first heard that, I was like, okay, that's kind of far-fetched, but then you think about the kind of work that he did, I guess it wouldn't be too crazy for him to have explosives. I don't know what he would be doing with them, but being, you know, the mechanical whiz that he was, I guess he could have had use for something like that. But regardless, we don't even know if that's his truck or not, so I don't know if that even matters. And I didn't see described anywhere that there was any evidence of explosives. It's just the fact that the truck is literally blown up, but that's it. We don't know how that happened. And the truck was discovered on a nearby mountain. So another odd thing that investigators noticed was that Granger had left all his possessions behind, including $10,000, which, if you remember, was profit from the vintage warplane that he rebuilt and sold. So if he was running away, you know, trying to disappear himself, I feel like you would need money to do that, so it seems kind of strange that he would just leave his money behind. He also left a note for his parents, which reads, "Dear Mother and Father, I have gone away to walk aboard an alien ship as recurring dreams assured a 42-month interstellar voyage to explore the vast universe, then return. I am leaving behind all my possessions to you as I will no longer require the use of any. Please use the instructions in my will as a guide to help. Love, Granger." Okay, so what is really weird is, I mean, besides that, he left 2 wills, and interestingly, the word deceased was scratched out and he replaced it with the word departed. Okay, so he clearly believed that he was going away. Like, he's not killing himself. He thinks he's coming back. Okay, and this happened now, what is this, almost 40 years ago, and he never came back. Also, on the other side of the letter that he wrote, there was a contour map of Waterloo Mountain, which was located about 20 miles away from his home. And as far as investigators or his family could tell, there's no correlation to that place and his disappearance. I'm sure they investigated this area and found nothing, but I don't think it should be ruled out. I think there would be a reason that's on there. If I had to guess, I would say that's where he was picked up to go on this journey, but there's no evidence that has been found to support any kind of theory on what this meant. Another thing I wanted to mention is the area that Granger disappeared from is not a stranger at all to UFO activity. There actually was a mass sighting of UFOs just 10 years before he disappeared. And this happened outside of Cowichan District Hospital, which is just a few miles away from where Granger lived, from his house. Staff at the hospital described seeing Saturn-shaped UFOs outside, and this happened on New Year's Eve, 1969. If you guys would like me to do a video on that case, let me know in the comments, because that one sounds really interesting too. And especially after researching this case, I'm actually very intrigued to know more about those UFOs. You know, I always wonder why certain areas are more prone to UFO activity than others. Where I'm from, I live in the Hudson Valley, and it is a hotbed of UFO activity here. I mean, there have been so many sightings over the years. And I think the reason for this is we're in such close proximity to New York City. Bias, of course, because I'm from New York City. I think it's the center of the universe. I think it's the best place ever. Like, I'm sorry, that's my honest opinion. I love New York. But, you know, there's just so much activity, and there's so many important figures that come to New York, and it's just like where everything is happening. So I would imagine that it would attract, you know, potentially extraterrestrials, or even if, you know, UFOs are people from the future. I would imagine that it would be an area that they would be interested in looking at and observing and doing whatever else they do. But I feel like while New York City does have a lot of UFO sightings as well, I feel like there's so many that probably go unnoticed because it's such like a fast, bright environment. You know, when you're there, especially if you're a local, you're not looking up at all. You're just like looking, getting from A to B, I'm going where I'm going, looking straight ahead. And if you're a tourist, you're just kind of like in La La Land and not paying attention to it. Like, you are looking at things, but you're not going to be looking up at the sky. You know what I'm saying? Like in the Hudson Valley, which is so close to it, but everything's open and you can easily see things. I think I mentioned this in another video. I have seen a UFO before here in the Hudson Valley. My mom saw one in the 80s in the Bronx. We're no stranger to that here. My family, especially me and my mom, like, we talk about this all the time, and I think that's probably part of the reason why I got so invested into this topic, into this area of discussion. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in that, if you want to hear my story, if you want to hear my mom's story. If you want me to do a video on the Cowichan sightings, please let me know. I'm definitely going to be researching it anyway. It sounds super, super interesting. Also, what do you think happened to Granger? Do you think that he really was abducted? Do you think that he just is missing? Do you think that he succumbed to the elements of the storm that night that he went out? What do you think happened? Because I think that he was abducted, I do, but I don't know why he didn't come back, because it sounds like he had every intention of returning. But, you know, maybe he's still on that journey. Maybe they said 42 years, but they didn't realize that 42 years here is different than it is for them. I don't know. Maybe something went wrong. Maybe he didn't want to come back. I don't know. Maybe he went on this trip and then realized, hey, I like it better with you guys. Like, or maybe his memory was erased. Who knows? We don't know. It's a mystery. I actually read, and this is a recent article from April, that somebody is actually making a documentary on his disappearance, so keep an eye out for that. Maybe they'll get into more of the crevices that haven't really been explored in this case. Anyway, I really hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please go ahead and hit that like button. It helps me out so much and I really appreciate it. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet and you do like this kind of content, then please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also, you want to hit that notification bell so you guys know when I put a new video out. I put out a video every single week and it's all this kind of trippy content, so if you like it, you should definitely stick around for more because I have a lot more coming your way. Thanks so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye guys.